Hey everyone, Orlando here, your co-founder of Toolhouse. Today I have a special guest. Aditya has been exploring synthetic data. He's an extremely interesting person to have here on the podcast, and we're very lucky to have him. He's been using Toolhouse, and I'm gonna let him explain how. And so I'm gonna bring Aditya to the stage, and he can introduce himself. So, hi Aditya, how you doing today?
Hi, Orlando. Thank you for having me on the Toolhouse podcast.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to a productive discussion.
Yeah, let's talk about where are you from? What's your background? What do you like to do?
Sure, yeah. I am an entrepreneur and a hacker based out of Mumbai, India. And I've been programming since the past 12 to 13 years almost. And I work very intensely with open source software. And lately, I've been working on a lot of educational initiatives to help people learn things like Python programming, AI, and just become more industry ready in general.
Okay.
So that work would comprise of everything I'm currently doing at the Hackers Playbook. And apart from that, I run my own research lab where we explore the interlinks between meditation and mindfulness and positive
Oh
psychology,
wow.
brain computer interfaces. So it's very experimental, but I've teamed up with a few other hackers from, a decade long journey where, we sort of share the same passion of wanting to do something impactful and, really improving the lives of people. So, the research lab is another of my ventures that I'm currently working on.
Oh wow, very interesting. And is the research lab like online or offline?
We all work remotely. It's primarily online.
And is it like people from all over the world, or how did you set it up right now?
Yeah, so initially we started like 13 years ago with Android devices where we would sort of mod Android devices, install like the Android kernel, which would be is technically an offshoot of the Linux kernel, and
Hmm.
do things like overclocking, memory optimizations, and all of that. And we started there and then gradually explored towards building web frameworks to studying like things in physics and biology and just have a very interdisciplinary outlook.
That's
So on
awesome.
the way and like throughout the journey, I sort of like met people who shared similar interests and they partnered with me, and we're currently like still working on a lot of interesting projects.
What do you call the lab? Does it have a name? Can so people can Google it?
Yeah, it's called Shinsai Labs. Uh,
Okay. We're
and
gonna
the
add a link into the description of the video so people can search it, and I think it'll be good for people to take a look. Oh, that's okay. So I've actually a question about this is how did you get started with the lab, and why were you excited about starting the lab?
Yeah, I mean, initially it was just these adventures I'd have with programming and technology, right? Learn about a new problem, write some code for it, and read new things, meet people, discuss ideas. And then gradually my curiosity sort of peaked, and I started becoming interested in a lot of different kinds of problems. And then gradually, I converged towards a larger vision, which is, I mean, at the end of the day, we all want to do things to improve humanity and help people all over the world. So I sort of aligned all the interests towards that, and we took on like projects related to mindfulness, where we're trying to bring mindfulness techniques and tech and fuse it together and see what are the kind of applications that we can create, what are the kind of experiences that we can build for people. And I've been very intensely into meditation and mindfulness since the past 3 or 4 years. I mean, I've been
Okay.
meditating since a long time, but I sort of fused that together with tech, and that became like the central theme at my research lab.
That is incredible. I mean, thank you so much for sharing that. Now, let's talk a little bit about your journey in programming. How did you get started, and what's your language of choice? Like, what do you program in mostly these days?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question, and it would give our viewers a lot of context. I don't remember the exact time when I
Okay.
started programming. It was like somewhere in school around between the age of 11 to 13. But before that, I was very involved with computers on a daily basis. I used to play video games, and back then you'd have to type DOS commands to run games. There was no
Yep.
easily available graphical user interface also. So I was always, familiar with the terminal. And then one day I just took a break from video games and just gave it a thought. What is it that I need to do to build video games like
Okay.
this? And that took me down a rabbit hole where I realized, okay, I need to learn programming and I need to learn to build software. And I started with Python, and lately I've been programming a lot with TypeScript and Python, and a bit of Go here and there for
Right.
system programming.
That's really interesting. I mean, at Toolhouse, we do mostly Python and TypeScript, so very familiar with that. Actually, I've never used Go. I heard it's a very nice language, but I never had time to just, dive in and learn about all the niceties that Golang does for developers. So, how did you hear about Toolhouse since, like we're on the Toolhouse podcast today? So, tell me, how did you discover Toolhouse, please?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it was just a regular browsing session on LinkedIn. I keep spending time on LinkedIn to find new ideas or things that are currently happening in the industry. And I just came across, I think, a post by you or I think the Toolhouse page. I don't recall exactly.
That's fine.
But then, yeah. But then I was just compelled to check it out. And then I saw it, and it was a developer first product. So I really like
Yeah,
developer first products,
that's
especially,
awesome.
yeah, and especially, the idea that you need to normally write, say, 50 to 80 lines of code to do something. And in one of your LinkedIn posts, you talked about how we programmers are a little lazy. We don't want to maintain those extra lines of code.
Yeah,
And
that's
that sort
exactly
of,
right.
yeah, and that sort of really resonated with me and I could relate to. And then I decided to try out the product. So at the Hackers Playbook, we're doing this 101 days of Python uh, program. It's like a small initiative that we started to help people, familiarize themselves with Python. And it's fully open source. Everything is free. You can check out the GitHub repo. And I decided to, try out some examples at 101 days of Python. And then we built the system design example. And we also did one, Tesla energy efficiency
Yeah.
simulation kind of experiment. Just, creative small
Yeah.
project. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw your Jupyter notebooks that you shared. They're very cool, and it's really nice that you're teaching developers how to use basically tool use with Toolhouse, function calling, and many other things. How do you usually distribute these notebooks? Do you like post on LinkedIn? Do you send emails to your community? How do people hear about it?
So currently we don't have any official distribution strategy for it yet. What we're doing is we're posting on LinkedIn. I have a developer on my, like, I have a few developers on my team. One developer is like working on this full time. So he shares it with his group of friends, and I share it on WhatsApp with my friends and my network, and post on LinkedIn, record a few demo videos. But we definitely, want to create a page or some sort of central location where people can easily access it and make use of it to the fullest.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I'm curious if you have explored our latest release in Toolhouse. There's a new thing called Prompt Studio. Have you had a chance to look, and what did you think about it?
No, I didn't get a chance to take a look at Prompt Studio. I'm still sort of exploring the core functionality of
Yeah.
Toolhouse. But I'll definitely check it out. I wasn't aware that y'all had launched
Oh yeah, no
something.
worries. I was just curious, like it's always good to ask. I think we announced it about a week or 10 days ago or so, so it's a pretty new feature. Um, Okay, my next question is tell me what you know or give me an introduction to synthetic data and why is it important? Because obviously, your notebook, that's kind of like the topic that you have used with Toolhouse in this notebook that you released. So let's talk about it. Imagine that I have never heard of synthetic data. And I come to you and I'm like, hey, Adi, why do I need synthetic data?
Sure, yeah. I think again that's a great question, and it would give our viewers a lot of insight into the what is synthetic data exactly, right? So, I mean, we could go to the textbook definition, but I'll give a more simple and easy to understand definition. Synthetic data is essentially data that mimics real world data, and it sort of emulates or has all the statistical patterns like your means and standard deviations as per a well known distribution, or
Yeah.
and essentially it would model if you had an exactly mimicking a real world sample, it would sort of show all the same properties across. So that's one definition, but to give a more simplified version of it, synthetic data, I can give you one very simple example which
Yeah, sure. That would be great.
yeah, which developers would relate. I mean, so many times we write tests for our code, right? And we
Yeah.
need data for a test. We need to seed our database with some sort of data to emulate like real world use cases. So in those cases, you could use something called as fake data, and
Yeah.
it's very important that I call out the difference between fake data and synthetic data.
Okay.
Fake data would not have semantic uh,
Mm.
it would not have semantic attributes that synthetic data would have, which essentially means that synthetic data has meaning to it.
Yeah.
And it, if you go through a synthetic data set, it would make sense.
Okay,
Whereas,
so synthetic data is modeled to mimic real world data, whereas fake data is just pretty much any kind of data. Maybe there's some very slight rules that enforces maybe, a name has to have a first name and a last name at least, et cetera, right? I'm actually familiar with something called faker.js. Yeah, are you also familiar with it?
yeah, I was in fact going to mention faker.js.
All right,
Which,
yeah, go for it.
yeah, but to answer your original question, yeah, you're absolutely right. Synthetic data sort of mimics real world data and has meaning. And coming to faker.js, that was my first, I think, my initial introduction or initiation to synthetic data, or at least understand the use case, was with faker.js, where
Got it.
uh, I was working with a client on a fintech application, and we had a lot of scenarios where we needed, say, a, particular data points to be in the database before the test is run. So we were using
Mm.
faker.js for that. But the thing with faker.js is, the thing with fake data is fake data will mimic patterns. Or if you say that, okay, I want a string, it will give you a string, but it might not necessarily give you the right. Because, for example, you might want a name, but it might give you a color.
Right,
So you
exactly.
need a lot of, as you said, rules to be able to model fake data to the level of semantic coherence that synthetic data would give you. Uh,
Okay, that makes sense. And so, how did you use Toolhouse to help you with, making synthetic data?
Uh, we currently are in the process of using Toolhouse for synthetic data. One of our goals is to, we've developed a product called SynthLight.
Yeah.
It's part of one of my projects called Synth Genetics, where we're sort of combining synthetic data generation and genetic programming and
Wow.
genetic engineering techniques to generate synthetic data. So we've built an MVP called SynthLight, and one of the reasons why we're also exploring Toolhouse is to sort of eventually work with Toolhouse and have a synthetic data generation tool, which is more widely accessible. So that is, or at least create a custom tool which we can internally use.
Yeah,
Uh,
creating tools in Toolhouse is, one of the reasons why we're building Toolhouse is we want to let people like you or anyone in the world be able to create their own tools and then basically have other people use it for free or for paid. And that's kind of the idea of having the Toolhouse marketplace, which is one of the many features that we offer at Toolhouse. And that sounds like a very useful tool, I think, because it would allow developers to like have, like you said, not fake data, but synthetic data that mimics the world. So I would be thrilled to see a synth lab. Is that what it's called? Synth lab
uh,
demo?
the the prototype that we launched is SynthLight, and the
Synthlight, sorry,
yeah, yeah.
Synthlight. Yeah. So I would love to see Synthlight in the Toolhouse store or in the Toolhouse tool catalog. Whenever you guys are ready to publish it, just reach out on Discord and we'll make it happen. Um, and so, yeah, I was gonna say, do you want to share your, maybe you have a LinkedIn username, something? Do you have anything that you want to tell the world as we wrap up this podcast?
Yeah, sure. I can share. my LinkedIn profile and Instagram, so you can always
Okay,
contact me or get in touch with me through that. And I'll also share my GitHub link and
absolutely.
uh, link to Hackers Playbook, my Substack, which is a very interesting newsletter for anyone interested in tech.
Okay,
We share a lot of relevant insights into tech, testing strategies, mental models, and it's, I'd
awesome.
say, a gold mine of information for anyone interested in tech. So I can share that.
That's awesome. And is your Substack like a free for everybody to read, or is it one of the paywalled ones?
It's free for everyone. Yeah.
Okay, so that's awesome. We can actually use Toolhouse to scrape your Substack and then distribute it to the world with some tools that we have. That would be a cool little project to do. Um, but yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. We've been over 15 minutes talking about synthetic data, fake data, your journey and what you're building. So I wanted to take this moment to thank you for being here, a guest of our podcast, and we're looking forward to see the future of what you're building and hopefully put it up on Toolhouse on the so that everybody can benefit from your hard work and your team's work. And so yeah, I will just add all the links in the description. This is a reels or like TikTok format video, so we're gonna make maybe we're gonna edit the links depending on where we post this. But with that being said, thank you again for being here, and I will see you soon on Discord.
Yeah. Thank you, Orlando, and more power to Toolhouse. Thank you for having me. It
Of
was
course, great. Thank you so much.